The story begins with Katajiri, a 28-year-old man living a harsh life. After 6 long months of doing heavy manual labor, he finally buys the latest game console he had been dreaming of. But the joy is short-lived. A piercing sound rings out that leaves Katajiri frozen. His face drains of color as he cannot believe what is happening in his own room. A mysterious sword falls from the sky, piercing the ceiling and impaling the precious game console. Half a year's savings vanish in an instant. The world Katajiri lives in changed completely 20 years ago, when gates connecting to other worlds appeared everywhere, bringing monsters that threaten humanity. To deal with them, awakened fighters called Hunters emerged. They are ranked from noble S-class down to lowly F-class based on their abilities. Katajiri is a typical F-class hunter. At 28, he remains at the bottom of society, scavenging and doing odd jobs in dungeons to get by. Back amid the wreckage in his room, Katajiri barely regains his composure when a blinding light emits from the sword. To his astonishment, a divine figure appears out of nowhere. It is the Holy Sword Spirit, a beautiful being with the noble appearance of an elf. She proclaims Katajiri the chosen hero to wield her and save a world on the brink of collapse. Katajiri's reaction? Instead of moved, he immediately calls the police to report an intruder, which drives her mad at being treated as suspicious. Katajiri even sarcastically suggests she dresses like a pervert and is trying to scare him. The pride of a would-be savior is deeply wounded. Insulted, the Holy Sword Spirit screams, demanding minimal respect from this cowardly hero. The small room erupts into chaos with their non-stop bickering. After brusquely sending the savior aside, Katajiri silently picks up a hammer to repair the ceiling. For him, the harsh reality of being poor matters far more than lofty notions of heroism. Katajiri gives a bitter, mocking laugh as she gushes about her noble mission. Save the world? Do I look like someone who can do that? The Holy Sword Spirit doesn't give up. She tries to ignite a spark in Katajiri, believing fate brought her here to find someone worthy. She brightly urges him to fight by her side. But all she gets is a flat no. Katajiri has no intention of embarking on the dangerous path she paints. Katajiri's expression suddenly darkens, revealing fatigue and trauma. He insists he has his own reasons for refusing to become a hero, a past he doesn't want to reopen. At that moment, his phone chimes with a job notification. The Holy Sword Spirit is baffled by the reasons he mentioned, while Katajiri prepares to head out to work. Unable to abandon the precious sword, despite his ruined game, Katajiri is forced to take the troublesome spirit along. But instead of flaunting the sword, he stuffs her into a cheap plastic bag, prompting her to cry humiliation. Walking the streets, Katajiri explains that letting a sword float visibly behind him would terrify people. Even if it seems only he can see her, caution comes first. They stop at an area with an open gate. Katajiri registers, and his identity as an F-class hunter is quickly confirmed by the staff. The attendant greets Katajiri warmly, thanking him for taking the job at the last minute. It seems he is a familiar face here. Katajiri is known as a handyman for his speed and care with odd jobs. He gets to work immediately, using a pickaxe to mine stone in the dungeon. While higher-ranked hunters dive into life-or-death battles with monsters, Katajiri's job is simply to gather magic ore. The Holy Sword Spirit watches in dismay at his ordinariness. For Katajiri, this is the perfect setup. No monsters to fight, just 8 hours of labor for a steady 7,000 yen. He has fully embraced being a coward, finding comfort in the safety of the shadows rather than risking the front lines. He pushes his cart in silence, resigned to a life of mediocrity in exchange for peace. In his mind, it's far too late to start a career as a hero, unaware that his quiet workday is about to take an unwelcome turn. Katajiri continues his mundane task, pushing the cart through the dungeon as the Holy Sword Spirit floats beside him. She cannot understand how he can accept this miserable, bottom-tier life as normal while the world is under attack. His quiet work is interrupted when a voice calls out. A group of hunters further in the cave has spotted him, and the recognition is far from friendly. Katajiri's expression remains weary, resigned to whatever interaction is coming. Enter Mikura, a rank C hunter who actually has history with Katajiri. They took the licensing exam together 5 years ago, and Mikura clearly hasn't forgotten the famous big talker. He wears his arrogance like armor, towering over the lowly rank F worker. It turns out that during the exam, Katajiri was full of ambition. He told everyone he'd become an SSS rank hunter and save the world. It's a bitter, embarrassing contrast to who he is now, standing in the shadow of his former dreams. Mikura and his goons can't stop laughing at the memory. SSS rank? The highest rank is S, making Katajiri's past aspirations look like the delusions of a fool. While Mikura has spent the last 5 years building a solid career, Katajiri has remained at the very bottom. Mikura can't help mocking the man who once had such grand goals. To him, Katajiri is nothing more than a bottom feeder who failed to live up to his own hype, forever stuck in the lower tiers of hunter society. To drive the point home, Mikura kicks Katajiri's cart with a burst of energy, spilling the precious or everywhere. Talent is cruel. He sneers, reveling in the power dynamic and his perceived superiority. Katajiri doesn't fight back. He silently drops to his knees to gather the spilled rocks, while Mikura mockingly thanks him for doing the grunt work, so real hunters don't have to get their hands dirty. His silence is heavy with unspoken frustration. He even forces a wide, painful smile, thanking Mikura and saying he'll be counting on them from now on. It's a gut-wrenching display of how far he'll humble himself just to avoid making things worse. Mikura is disgusted by the lack of backbone and heads deeper into the gate. Meanwhile, the Holy Sword spirit fumes, shouting at Katajiri. She can't understand how he can let someone insult and degrade him without a shred of anger. She's seen countless legendary heroes across many worlds, but she brands Katajiri the biggest coward of them all. He just sighs and looks away, claiming he's doing what he can and that his quiet endurance is enough for him. The sad truth is Katajiri has developed a deep-seated fear of social friction. He admits he simply doesn't want anyone to hate him, choosing the path of least resistance, even if it costs him his dignity. The Holy Sword spirit finds this mindset fundamentally wrong. Katajiri explains that this is exactly why he avoids stirring up trouble, preferring the safety of the shadows to the risks of being noticed or judged. She stops him with a piercing look, warning that if he keeps killing his true self just to avoid being hated, he'll become a hollow shell no one will ever truly understand. Her words are sharp, try to wake the hero she believes is buried inside him. But Katajiri has heard enough. He turns his back on her advice and pushes his cart further into the dark cave. Well, that's just the way I live, he mutters, a man who has long since given up on himself. He checks his phone, viewing a radar-like display of the dungeon map. He needs to locate where the current group of hunters is working to deliver the supplies. This should be it, he thinks, focused on his simple task. Suddenly, Katajiri senses something unusual. He peeks around a rock and sees a large opening in the cave. Normally they'd carry the ore outside the gate, but something strange is happening further in. What exactly is Mikura planning? In the center of the chamber stands the gate's boss, a rank D monster known as Reborn Rafflesia. It's a grotesque, multi-headed plant beast with rows of sharp teeth, towering over the cave floor. The Holy Sword spirit recognizes the creature, but Katajiri is the one who notices something alarming. This Rafflesia is far larger and more menacing than any typical rank D monster should be. Something is very wrong. Mikura spots Katajiri and immediately barks orders, telling him he's late and to bring the ore over at once. Katajiri is confused and hesitant as he looks at the monster and then back at the cart of magic stones. His blood runs cold as he watches. They aren't killing the beast. They're feeding the magic or directly into its mouth. Katajiri can't believe what he's seeing. This is pure insanity. Mikura laughs, calling it a life hack that a bottom feeder like Katajiri wouldn't understand. Killing a mere rank D monster doesn't add much to his record, so he's feeding it to force it to grow stronger before he slays it, for a greater achievement. The greed in Mikura's eyes is terrifying. He is obsessed with climbing higher and becoming famous faster, no matter the risk. He smiles wickedly, convinced he can handle whatever the monster becomes. Mikura is relentless, urging the beast to gorge itself on the magic, or while completely ignoring the Holy Sword Spirit's desperate warnings. Katajiri can only watch in a cold sweat, realizing that the hunter's reckless ambition is about to trigger a disaster that will spiral far beyond this cave. With grim urgency, the spirit explains the gate's hidden mechanics. It's a breeding ground for entities from another world. By forcing the monster to mature so rapidly, Mikura is inadvertently completing a summoning ritual, and if he succeeds, the horror that emerges will be unstoppable. The Holy Sword Spirit paints a grim picture of the future. If the monster matures, it will break into the real world, turning the city into a battlefield and causing countless casualties. This isn't just a dungeon raid anymore. It's a countdown to catastrophe. Unaware of the stakes, Mikura smiles wickedly, thinking it's finally time to claim his glory. Katajiri can only watch in horror, realizing that the arrogant hunter has no idea what kind of hell he's about to unleash. With a boastful shout, Mikura prepares his ultimate skill, Kaiser Rust 90. He channels all his power into his spear, which is embedded with a high-grade magic stone, intending to end the fight in one flashy move. He lunges forward, his attack tearing through the air and striking the massive Rafflesia with a thunderous impact. For a moment, it looks like he might actually succeed in taking down the beast. Easy win. Mikura scoffs, his ego reaching new heights. But his smirk vanishes when he realizes he only managed to sever a single, insignificant piece of a tentacle. The monster isn't dead. It's barely even wounded. The beast doesn't give him a chance to recover. In a blur of movement, its massive tentacles whip around, striking with enough force to shatter stone and send everything in their path flying. The counterattack is brutal. Mikura is caught in the impact, his armor cracking as he's sent hurtling across the cavern. Katajiri can only shield his eyes from the debris, his worst fears coming true in an instant. The cavern fills with dust and the monster's deafening roar. Mikura lies broken on the ground, his confidence shattered along with his gear. Katajiri stands over him, trembling as the reality sets in. That monster is far beyond anything a C-rank hunter can handle. Katajiri's mind is a tangle of self-doubt and social anxiety. He admits he's terrified of being hated, and his warped logic tells him that if he fails to save Mikura here, his friends and family will despise him for it. It's a pathetic reason to be a hero, but it's all he has. He snaps at Mikura's group, telling them to get out before they all die. The Holy Sword Spirit watches him closely, sensing a flicker of something in the man who has spent years trying to be invisible. Even in his panic, Mikura realizes they have no choice but to retreat. As the others scramble for safety, Katajiri clenches his fist so hard his knuckles turn white. He tells himself he's retreating, that it's the only logical choice for an F-rank hunter, but something is holding him back. The spirit's voice cuts through the chaos, asking if he's really going to walk away. Katajiri explodes in frustration, shouting that a loser like him doesn't stand a chance against a monster that has already mutated into a B-rank threat. He wants to leave it to the real heroes. To Katajiri, heroes are people born with innate talent and power, things he clearly lacks. He gestures at the air, citing all the legendary figures the spirit has mentioned, convinced that he's just trash compared to them. His self-loathing is palpable as he screams that there's no way a holy sword would choose someone like him. He can't accept the responsibility, but the spirit's gaze remains steady, unfazed by his outburst. The spirit reveals a profound truth. The person chosen by the holy sword isn't necessarily born with great power. Her words carry the weight of ages, challenging Katajiri's entire worldview of what makes a hero. She stares directly into his soul, telling him that even if he is weak, he becomes a hero the moment he chooses to fight for someone else. She saw that spark in him just now when he tried to save the man who had bullied him. You must have had your own reason to fight, didn't you? She asks. Katajiri goes quiet, the dungeon's noise fading as his mind drifts back to the tragedy that broke his spirit years ago. Memories of college flood back. A funeral, a grieving family, and the crushing guilt of a best friend who took his own life because he couldn't handle the fear of the monster attacks. Katajiri stood there, helpless, as the world fell apart. Back then, he thought becoming a hunter was the answer. He sat in lectures, daydreaming that maybe, if he had the power, he could have saved his friend. He wanted to achieve something great, to change the world so no one else would have to feel that despair. The image of his younger self is heart-wrenching, full of fire and conviction, declaring to his classmates that he would become an SSS rank hunter and save the world. He was so sure of his destiny back then. But reality was a cruel teacher. The flashback shows him being beaten, his dreams crushed by a world that didn't care about his resolve. He was forced to realize how powerless and untalented he truly was compared to the elites. The bitterness of that realization still lingers. He compares himself to others and feels like a worthless bastard for giving up without really trying, retreating into his shell to avoid feeling that failure again. Katajiri's voice is thick with emotion as he asks if the spirit is really telling him to dream again after everything he's been through. He's terrified of opening his heart only to have it broken one more time. The Rafflesia's rampage intensifies, its lethal tentacles sweeping closer by the second. Amidst the chaos, the Holy Sword Spirit's voice rings out like a final command, reminding Katajiri that the lives of everyone in the city and this dungeon now depend entirely on his next move. His pride, his regrets, and the lives of those around him all hang in the balance. Katajiri's knuckles turn white as he grits his teeth, the silence within him finally fracturing. The moment has come to choose. Will he remain a loser in the dark, or will he finally answer the call? With a roar that shakes the cavern, Katajiri finally breaks his silence. The cowardice he's clung to for years snaps under the weight of the moment as he charges forward with reckless abandon. Fine then, I'll do it, he shouts, his eyes burning with a resolve the Holy Sword Spirit has been waiting to see. The two of them, the reluctant loser and the Holy Spirit, are finally in sync for the first time. But the reality check comes fast. When Katajiri frantically asks what divine power the Holy Sword can unleash, the spirit cheerily shouts, "Nothing," with a giant smile, leaving him completely flabbergasted. She explains that bringing out her true power requires time and rigorous training, things they definitely don't have right now. Katajiri fumes at the irony, but she casually mentions that charging straight at the enemy at full speed is always an option. Katajiri takes a moment to process the absurdity of the plan. A holy sword, that's basically just a high-speed projectile? He sighs, looks at the monster, and mutters, "That works. It's stupid, but it's the only shot they've got. Just aim where I point you, and charge with everything you've got." Katajiri's face hardens. He's done running away. He readies himself to become a human torpedo, with the Holy Sword Spirit leading the way. In a flash of light and raw speed, Katajiri lunges at the reborn Rafflesia. The cavern walls blur as he propels himself forward, the air whistling past him with terrifying intensity. The other hunters watch in disbelief as the man they mocked for being a coward suddenly becomes a blur of motion. "Whoa!" One of them cries out, unable to track Katajiri's incredible speed. Katajiri's bravado quickly turns to panic as he realizes he can't control the momentum. "Stop! You're way too fast!" he screams, but the Holy Sword Spirit yells back that once she starts moving, there's no stopping until they hit something. "Turn, damn it!" Katajiri pulls with all his might, his face contorted in a mix of rage and terror. The massive monster looms closer, its multiple heads snapping at the incoming projectile. Impact! Katajiri slams into the creature's thick hide with a thunderous crash. The force of the blow sends shockwaves through the chamber, tearing through the monster's outer layers like a hot knife through butter. The monster's heads thrash in pain as Katajiri's holy sword pierces its defenses. But even with such a massive hit, the beast's regenerative powers are already working to mend the shredded flesh. Katajiri grinds his teeth as he sees the wounds closing up. Shit, no matter how many times I slash, it just keeps regenerating, he thinks. That's when the Holy Sword Spirit points out the glowing core hidden deep within the center. That's the only way to end this. If you cut the core in the center, it should die, the spirit shouts. Katajiri locks his eyes onto the target. It's a small window of opportunity, and he'll have to get past a literal forest of deadly vines to reach it. The Rafflesia senses the threat and shields its weak point. A mass of thorny vines weaves together into a dense, impenetrable barrier, while the giant eye at the center glares with a malevolent light. Katajiri's eyes widen as vines sprout from every direction, seeking to entangle and crush him. He's caught off guard by the sheer number of them, his frantic charge suddenly meeting a wall of thorns. The monster strikes back with overwhelming force. Katajiri is buffeted by a barrage of heavy vine lashes, each blow landing like a sledgehammer. He's thrown around the chamber like a rag doll, his strength failing. He takes a hard hit directly to the chest, a scream of pain escaping his throat as he's sent skidding across the uneven stone floor. The impact is devastating, leaving him breathless and reeling. The Holy Sword Spirit screams for him to run as the vines begin to coil around his limbs like hungry serpents. Katajiri lies there, bloodied and beaten, staring at the ceiling as the familiar weight of despair threatens to drown him again. Am I really just running away again? He asks himself. The image of his past self declaring his dream to the world flashes before his eyes. The contrast between that boy and the man lying in the dirt is almost more painful than the monster's blows. No, never. Katajiri's hand shoots out, gripping the hilt of the holy sword with a strength that defies his injuries. He rejects the identity of a loser. He refuses to let this be the end of his story. He drags himself up, eyes fixed on the core. I'm never giving up again, he declares, his aura shifting as he prepares for one final, desperate gambit. If a simple charge isn't enough, he'll give it everything he has left. Holy thrust! Katajiri launches himself forward, but it's not a graceful sword strike. It's a raw, violent hurl of his entire body. He pierces the vine shield and slams directly into the monster's core with the force of a falling star. A blinding burst of light consumes the cavern as the monster lets out one last, agonized shriek before dissolving into mana particles. When the dust finally settles, the holy sword stands alone in the cracked earth, a testament to a victory that was anything but graceful. Katajiri collapses onto the floor, gasping for air with a bloody, triumphant grin. While the Holy Sword Spirit stares in shock at his filthy fighting style, he simply chuckles and tells her to get used to it. For one brief moment, everything feels like the perfect, epic start to a hero's legend. Katajiri strikes a heroic pose, finally embracing his destiny as a true protagonist. With the Holy Sword Spirit at his side and a cape fluttering in the wind, he declares to the world that he will rise from the bottom to become an SSS rank hunter and save humanity. It's the kind of epic moment that marks the beginning of a legendary saga. At least, that's how the story is supposed to go in a typical hero's journey. In reality, Katajiri is frantically scrambling through the dirt, screaming for his life as the dungeon's cave-in threatens to bury him alive. Let's get out of here. The gate's closing, he yells, clutching the holy sword while trying to survive another day. Welcome to the unrefined, chaotic, and very real life of the world's most reluctant savior. The story begins with a narration of the modern world, where gates connecting to the monster realm have long appeared. Those brave enough to enter and fight are called hunters. Katajiri, our protagonist, was just a low-ranked hunter who made a living cleaning up, but now he's been saddled with a major nuisance. A talking holy sword has landed in his life. And the owner of that voice is none other than the elf queen's spirit inside the holy sword. She constantly screams, urging Katajiri to go out there and undertake the noble mission of saving the world. It's certainly not the quietest possible start for this man, who just wants an easy life. Back in his tiny kitchen, Katajiri grumbles about sore muscles from chasing after this savior all day as he prepares a meal. He just wants to quietly enjoy the carbonara he made, but the Elf Queen's spirit keeps hovering around, endlessly complaining about her new owner's laziness. The Elf Queen's spirit begins explaining that the Holy Sword's power doesn't manifest by itself. Katajiri will have to train himself to gradually unlock its potential. According to her, mastering a legendary weapon like this is a long process, not something one becomes proficient at overnight. Hearing this, Katajiri curiously asks what she can actually do, but the answer he gets is a loud, decisive shout of "I don't know." It turns out that although the sword contains great power, how it's used entirely depends on the hero who wields it. It's an answer that leaves one speechless. She continues recounting the heroes of the past who once owned her. Some used the sword to unleash holy light, others reached the pinnacle of swordsmanship, and some even combined it with supreme martial arts. Each found a unique fighting style to fully realize the Holy Sword's power. Katajiri begins to imagine it like a skill tree system from role-playing games. Depending on each person's choices and development path, they unlock entirely different abilities. The familiar RPG concept appearing in real life makes it much easier for a gamer like Katajiri to grasp. In the end, everything comes back to one point: personal effort. The Elf Queen's spirit urges Katajiri that if he wants to use her in his own way, he must start training right away. But looking at Katajiri's listless face, effort seems a luxury he can't afford at the moment. The Elf Queen's enthusiasm swells to the point where she wants Katajiri to go on a solo dungeon run today to slay monsters. But Katajiri only sighs in exasperation, declaring he has his own rhythm of life and still needs to do odd jobs to get by. He can't just go playing hero. To prove his point, Katajiri points to the bowl of carbonara loaded with bacon and pepper that he's holding. He claims no restaurant could make the exact bowl he likes, and no matter how many times he cooks it, its flavor will always be perfect to him. The Elf Queen's spirit is baffled, not understanding why her owner suddenly switched to a lecture on cuisine. But to Katajiri, life's small pleasures like this are what he wants to cherish most. He doesn't want to trade this peace for glory fraught with danger. Seeing the Elf Queen fall silent and listen, Katajiri assumes she's understood and accepted his slow-paced life. He eats his noodles feeling satisfied that he's apparently won over the picky princess. But it seems that silence was only the calm before the storm. Immediately, she screams angrily, "I will not accept that." Her violent reaction nearly chokes Katajiri on his noodles. Clearly, his arguments about small pleasures carry no weight at all with a spirit desperate to save the world. She believes that since Katajiri gained great power through her, he has a responsibility to fight immediately to protect peace. While she continuously lectures beside the sword planted in the floor, Katajiri can only clutch his head in distress. Memories of harrowing battles from his past suddenly wash over him, sinking his mood. Katajiri sits by the window, his eyes heavy with sadness and fatigue. He tells himself that if he could easily do the great things she talks about, he wouldn't have struggled through this hard life for so long. The weight of expectations from a legendary thing is simply too much for someone who already sees himself as a failure. Just then, his phone buzzes with a notification for a new quest. Still keeping his leisurely style, Katajiri decides he'll go after he finishes eating, despite the Elf Queen's spirit grumbling behind him. And so a new trip is about to begin, though its purpose seems unrelated to saving the world. This time the destination is a forest inside a C-rank gate. As soon as he steps in, danger becomes obvious with the appearance of a ferocious saber-toothed tiger. A low-ranked hunter, like Katajiri wandering here, is basically handing himself over to the monsters. However, Katajiri's actual goal is an F-ranked task, gathering herbs. While he scrabbles at the ground digging, the Elf Queen's spirit stands beside him, constantly pointing at the monster prowling nearby, urging him to take it down quickly. The contrast between a herb-gathering task and a C-rank monster right next to him is laughably absurd. Pushed too far, Katajiri snaps and declares he hates being pressured above all else. He still hasn't forgiven her for breaking his beloved game console, and her constant demands that he fight only make him more irritated. For him, collecting herbs to earn money is the top priority right now. At this point, the Elf Queen's spirit becomes serious and warns of a crisis looming over the world. That's why she descended and sought him out. Katajiri asks when it will happen, but she can only shake her head. The vague answer about an unspecified disaster makes Katajiri even more skeptical. She continues to shout that Katajiri must master his power to be ready for that moment. However, Katajiri remains stubborn. He orders her to shut up and insists he won't do unpaid work. Let the hunters who come after handle monster slaying, and he only cares about the bundle of herbs in his bag. Confronted with her owner's obstinacy, the Elf Queen's spirit suddenly asks a question that hits the mark. Are you afraid? The direct question makes Katajiri pause, and the space around them seems to quiet as he faces the truth he's long concealed. Without evading it, Katajiri admits bluntly, "Yes, of course I'm scared." Looking at the massive C-rank monster in the distance, he knows exactly what his own abilities are. His self-doubt as a lowly F-ranker and the haunting failures of his past leave him with no confidence that he can defeat such a powerful opponent. "No, that's not what I meant," Katajiri mutters, his voice heavy with a secret burden. For a moment, the lazy scavenger disappears, replaced by a man haunted by a past he can't escape. The Elf Queen is caught off guard, sensing a flicker of something noble and tragic buried deep within the person she thought was just a coward. But her patience has reached its limit. Refusing to wait for him to find his courage, she begins to withdraw, leaving Katajiri vulnerable and alone. He reaches out to stop her, an apology dying on his lips, but the moment is cut short. The forest erupts in a savage roar. The saber-toothed tiger has found its opening, and the hunt is on. The battle explodes violently. The saber-toothed tiger lunges with terrifying speed, while the holy sword is lodged in a tree trunk just behind it. It's an extremely tight situation when Katajiri's only weapon lies out of reach, forcing him to face death in an instant. The sword trembles violently, trying to free itself from the tree to save its master. Amid the monster's earth-shaking roar, the Elf Queen's spirit keeps urging Katajiri to seize her quickly and counterattack. Yet the tiger has closed the distance so fast that any attempt to reach the weapon becomes extremely risky. "Grab me and cut down the enemy now." The Elf Queen's shout echoes in Katajiri's mind. But instead of rushing to the sword, Katajiri yells back in confusion, "What the hell are you doing?" Between life and death, their language and viewpoint clash, pushing the situation to a razor's edge. Katajiri grits his teeth, his expression a mix of determination and despair. He mumbles, "No, that's not right." It seems he's wrestling with an intense inner conflict, some hidden fear making him hesitate to touch the legendary weapon to resolve the crisis. Suddenly, Katajiri grips the shovel tightly, charges forward and shouts, "I'll take it down myself. If we keep relying on others, nothing will change." This reckless move leaves the Elf Queen's spirit astonished. He chooses to fight like a true scavenger hunter rather than become a hero in an instant. Alone. "Are you insane?" The Elf Queen's spirit screams as she sees Katajiri turn his back on the sword and rush straight at the monster. She knows his strength isn't enough to face a C-rank beast head-on, and this action is nothing short of suicide. Katajiri growls, "Shut up. Just stand there and watch." Though his brow is drenched in sweat and his heart races, he doesn't back down. The Elf Queen's spirit falls silent, watching his retreating back and cursing the stubborn, recklessly bold scavenger hunter. The saber-toothed tiger unleashes a thunderous pounce that makes the ground quake. Katajiri only has time to roll to the ground to narrowly dodge the attack. Dust swirls, and the beast's roar seems to tear at his eardrums. He's using every survival instinct to hold on in this hopeless fight. Katajiri staggers to his feet, breath ragged. He realizes that up close the monster is far larger and more terrifying than he imagined. Clutching the trembling shovel, he calls himself a fool but refuses to surrender. Deep down, he has no other choice. Yuaea! Katajiri's scream echoes through the forest as the tiger lunges again. He runs madly across the rocks, trying to put distance between himself and the predator. Fear is writ across his face, but his legs keep moving, searching for a slim chance to counterattack. A massive impact cracks the ground just behind Katajiri. He tumbles and pants, nearly dead. What kind of demonic strength is this? The tiger hasn't given up. It growls, sniffing through the dust, preparing the decisive pounce to finish off the small prey. Move fast! Katajiri scrambles up, eyes darting to find something in the undergrowth. He tells himself he must find it quickly if he wants to survive. A spark of hope appears when he spots a familiar leaf, and with a burst of speed he cries out in excitement. Found it! The tiger's ear twitches, and it immediately turns toward the sound. A powerful pounce tears through the air toward Katajiri. But this time, he's ready. Instead of dodging, Katajiri prepares to unleash a secret weapon he just harvested while gathering herbs. Katajiri swings the shovel, not to strike the beast, but to toss his trump card, a mandrake root. Instantly, the herb emits a piercing screech. The ear-splitting sound leaves both the tiger and Katajiri reeling, but it's his only chance to turn the tide. Now's our chance. Taking advantage of the tiger's stunned state, Katajiri grits his teeth, leaps up, and raises the shovel high. He pours every ounce of strength into the strike, hoping to finish the monster immediately. It's the biggest gamble he's ever taken as a hunter. A deafening thud rings out as the shovel crashes into the tiger's head. Yet, contrary to his hopes, the blow from a tool barely dents the steel-like hide of the C-rank beast. Katajiri realizes with horror the fatal mistake he's made as the tiger still stands, eyes full of killing intent. The tiger lets out an enraged roar and flings Katajiri far away. The impact sends him out of sight, leaving a terrifying silence. The Elf Queen's spirit is stunned. She can only gasp in utter panic as she witnesses the horrific scene. Katajiri lies sprawled on the ground, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth and his beloved shovel snapped in two. He looks at his empty hands and bitterly admits, "I knew from the start I couldn't win. So why?" A harsh truth is laid bare. Blind bravery cannot replace real power. Careful! The Elf Queen's spirit's shout rings out as the tiger lunges to finish its prey. Katajiri sees the massive shadow looming over him, and only one question fills his mind. Why did I try to fight this alone? Helplessness consumes his entire being. At the critical moment, the holy sword suddenly streaks through the air, drawing a line of light between Katajiri and the monster. The Elf Queen's spirit rushes in front of him, shouting his name, Katajiri. She cannot stand by and watch her master torn apart, no matter how stubborn he may be. Why aren't you using me? Her question rings out amid the monster's growls. Katajiri clutches his head and screams in the chaos. I'm so confused. Suddenly I'm forced to hold the holy sword and save the world. I really don't know what to do. The long-suppressed frustration finally erupts. He bows his head, hands clenched. Of course I'm afraid of monsters. But more than that, I feel like having this weapon is just a mistake. Katajiri feels he's just a low-tier 28-year-old scavenger hunter who does odd jobs, completely undeserving of such a grand mission. His greatest fear isn't death, but being afraid of failing again. Katajiri's eyes hold a deep, unhealed pain from the past, a wound that makes him insecure and withdrawn. He would rather fight and die alone than take hold of hope only to let it slip away. The Holy Sword spirit stands frozen as the truth finally hits her. Katajiri wasn't being stubborn. He was being selfless in his own twisted way. He tried to face the monster alone because he felt unworthy of her power, paralyzed by the fear that he would only drag her down. Looking at him curled up in despair, the arrogant spirit feels a pang of genuine empathy, realizing that the psychological weight he carries is far more dangerous than the beast lunging at them. "Do you really think so?" she asks softly, her voice losing its usual haughty tone. She admits that when fate first brought her to him, she doubted whether such a slacker could ever be a savior. But seeing his raw pain now, she realizes his fear doesn't come from cowardice, but from a heart that cares too much about the consequences of failure. It is this very capacity for empathy, she realizes, that makes him precisely the kind of hero the world needs. The Holy Sword spirit gazes at Katajiri with newfound understanding. She realizes that despite his slacker facade, his heart is fundamentally oriented towards saving others. The moment someone needed help, he moved without thinking, regardless of whether his actions made sense. This innate heroism is why she chose him. "No matter how many times you fail, I'll stay with you," she says softly, her voice filled with a sincerity that cuts through Katajiri's self-doubt. She reminds him that nobody is perfect from the start, and that her presence isn't a mistake, but a partnership meant to endure through every hardship. With a warm smile, she reaffirms her faith in him. "Because I believe you can save this world." It's a heavy burden, but hearing it from the legendary weapon itself gives Katajiri a flicker of hope he hasn't felt in a long time. For the first time, he doesn't feel like a total failure. Katajiri looks down, his face hidden in the shadow of his hair. He realizes that as he got older, he began overthinking everything, letting fear and past trauma dictate his every move. The weight of his own expectations was the real monster he couldn't defeat. The Holy Sword spirit urges him to stop brooding and just move. She believes action is the best cure for anxiety, and that instead of wasting time thinking about what could go wrong, he should trust his instincts and her power. It's time to stop standing still. Katajiri rises, a determined look finally crossing his face. He takes hold of the sword and says, "I'm sorry. Please lend me your strength." It's a humble plea, but it marks the true beginning of their bond as hero and weapon. The air around them crackles with new energy. Took you long enough," the spirit replies with a smug but relieved smile. The saber-toothed tiger growls nearby, sensing the sudden shift in the atmosphere. The predator's eyes narrow as it prepares for one final clash against the prey that has suddenly found its teeth. The battle resumes, but this time the roles are reversed. Katajiri moves with a fluidity he lacked before, guided by the Holy Sword spirit. He ducks under a massive swipe from the tiger, his mind clear and focused on finding the right moment to strike. The spirit is impressed by his reflexes as he dodges another lethal pounce. "Katajiri, create an opening," she commands. Katajiri grins, confidence surging. "You don't need to tell me twice," he yells, ready to put everything on the line for this one shot. Katajiri leaps into the air as the tiger lunges to meet him. It's a clash of beast and man, but this time the man wields the light of salvation. He prepares to swing the blade, his resolve hardening into a sharp, unbreakable point. A brilliant flash of light erupts as the Holy Sword strikes. The blade cuts through the tiger's momentum, a massive surge of holy energy overwhelming the creature's defenses. The forest itself seems to hold its breath as the power of the legendary weapon is finally unleashed. "Now!" Katajiri bellows as he brings the sword down for the final blow. The tiger lets out one last roar before being submerged in a blinding radiance. The struggle is over, and the power dynamic has been decisively settled in favor of the new wielder of the Holy Sword. "Holy strike!" Katajiri shouts as the finishing move connects. A massive explosion of light and energy consumes the tiger, leaving nothing but dust and the echo of the strike. It's a resounding victory, a clear sign that Katajiri's journey has truly begun. The tiger lies defeated, its massive body dissolving into particles of energy. The forest returns to a precarious silence, broken only by Katajiri's heavy breathing. He did it. He defeated a C-rank monster using the power he was so afraid to touch. As the smoke clears, the spirit starts complaining about his messy fighting style. "Seriously, can't we find a better way to fight?" she asks, exasperated. Katajiri just tells her to shut up, exhaustion finally catching up to him. Their bickering dynamic returns, but there's a new layer of respect beneath it. Katajiri looks at the sword in his hand, a small smile forming. I'll figure out how to use you better, he promises. He's determined to climb the ranks in his own way and as fast as he can, no longer content with being a scavenger at the very bottom. The spirit smiles back and looks up at the sky. After that battle, they spent time taking down weaker monsters to build Katajiri's experience. He eventually reported the quest, as somehow the monster was already defeated to avoid suspicion and managed to get away with the lie. The moment of triumph arrives. Katajiri stares at his phone with a giddy expression as the screen displays a large E for his new rank. Finally, I escaped the very bottom, he whispers. Moving from F rank to E rank feels monumental for someone who's struggled so long. With his job rewards in hand, Katajiri heads straight to the electronics store. He walks out grinning, carrying a bag with a brand new PW5 console. To him, this is the ultimate reward for his hard work, a chance to reclaim the lifestyle he loves. On his way home, the spirit teases him about his entertainment, though she admits a hero sometimes needs a break. Katajiri is in high spirits, humming as he walks. He doesn't need her permission to enjoy himself and looks forward to some well-deserved relaxation. Tonight, I'm going to pull an all-nighter, Katajiri thinks happily, practically skipping down the street. He even bought a game he's wanted forever. Little does he know, a pair of sharp, predatory eyes watches him from the shadows of an alley. Found you, a voice whispers. Suddenly, a blur of motion strikes. A figure lunges at Katajiri, slashing through his shopping bags and sending his precious new game flying. Katajiri is caught completely off guard. His moment of pure happiness is shattered in an instant by the unexpected assailant. Katajiri stumbles back, face pale with shock. Standing before him is a girl with twin tails and a star hair clip, wielding deadly daggers. Wielder of the holy sword, she says coldly. Katajiri can only manage a confused huh as he stares at the person who ruined his night. The mysterious girl, SSS, takes a lethal stance, her twin blades gleaming under the streetlights. She looks far more dangerous than any monster Katajiri has faced, and her ambush has turned his peaceful walk home into a potential crime scene. With chilling indifference, she levels her weapons and asks, "Any last words?" As SSS's intense, unblinking gaze locks onto him, Katajiri realizes his luck has officially run out. From a sword crashing through his ceiling to an assassin ruining his shopping, his life is escalating into a series of disasters. The piece he just bought is shattered. His life and his precious new console are on the line. Tension fills the air as Katajiri stands frozen, shopping bags still in hand, facing the mysterious assassin. SHI doesn't hesitate. Her eyes are cold and focused as she prepares to strike again. It's surreal, a life-or-death battle unfolding in the middle of a city street. A brief interlude explains the situation's gravity. The first unit of trouble was the holy sword itself, which practically stabbed Katajiri to death by crashing through a ceiling. Now the second unit has arrived, a mysterious girl intent on cutting him down. To make matters worse, his 78,000 yen Playworld's 5 console has become collateral damage. Katajiri's reaction is nothing short of tragic. He falls to his knees, mourning his destroyed PW5 more than his own life. My PW5, no, he bellows, his voice echoing through the night. The holy sword spirit stares in disbelief, shouting at him to wake up because the girl is about to kill him. The battle truly begins as SHI lunges forward with predatory speed. Katajiri snaps out of his mourning and draws the holy sword just in time. Jump! The spirit commands, and Katajiri propels himself into the air, narrowly avoiding a lethal swipe from SHI's daggers. The peaceful night has officially become a battlefield. SHI's eyes are devoid of emotion as she pursues her target. You won't escape, she whispers, her movements as sharp and precise as her blades. She's not a random attacker, but a professional hunter trained for this purpose. Katajiri is way out of his depth. While Katajiri panics on a rooftop, the Holy Sword spirit remains smug. She's delighted to imagine her glorious legend has already spread to this world, assuming that's why people are after her. Katajiri, meanwhile, just wants her to wipe that smug look off her face and help him not die. Katajiri complains about being hunted everywhere, but the spirit suddenly senses something. Detecting faint killing intent, she mutters. SHI has already caught up, appearing right behind them like a ghost. Katajiri is terrified by her persistence. He's never felt killing intent this strong before. "She's right behind us," the spirit yells, eyes wide with surprise. Katajiri's heart nearly stops as he realizes how close the assassin has gotten without him noticing. The gap in their combat abilities is painfully obvious as SHI prepares her next move. "Say that earlier," Katajiri screams, his face twisted with panic and frustration. He barely has time to react as SHI's blades slice through the air again. Every second is a desperate struggle to stay alive against an opponent who moves faster than his eyes can follow. The two engage in a frantic dance of death across the rooftop. SHI is a blur of motion, her twin daggers weaving a web of steel that Katajiri must constantly navigate. He's barely holding it together, his movements clumsy beside the assassin's practiced grace. SHI's inner monologue reveals her motive. She has to retrieve the Holy Sword, or Papa will be angry. Katajiri tries a different tactic, yelling about hunter regulations and how pointing weapons at people outside the gate will cost her license. It's a hilariously desperate attempt to use bureaucracy to stop a killer. "It doesn't matter," SHI mutters, completely ignoring Katajiri's warnings. She's focused only on her mission. Katajiri realizes words won't work, so he turns to the Holy Sword spirit. "Oi, Holy Sword, I need a favor," he shouts, knowing he must sync with her power to survive. SHI lunges forward, her blades poised to finish it. But Katajiri is ready this time. He blocks her attack with newfound precision, the Holy Sword glowing faintly. SHI's eyes widen in surprise. She didn't expect the clumsy scavenger to be able to counter her. The clash of steel rings across the rooftops as they trade blows. Katajiri is pushed to his absolute limit, every muscle screaming from exertion. But with the spirit guiding his movements, he's somehow staying a step ahead of SHI's lethal daggers. Both fighters are locked in a fierce struggle, faces inches apart. Katajiri grits his teeth, sweat pouring down his face, while SHI remains eerily calm. The Holy Sword is the only thing between him and a quick death, and the weight of that reality begins to sink in. The spirit gives quick instructions. Sync your moves with the killing intent you sense. Block with the blade. Katajiri nods, determination overriding fear. "I'll hold you steady. Don't get blown away," he yells, focusing everything on the next few seconds. The battle's speed increases further. SHI moves so fast Katajiri's eyes can't keep up. He's essentially fighting on instinct and the spirit's guidance, blocking strikes he can barely see. What the hell is with this speed? He wonders, heart racing. Suddenly, SHI reveals a hidden knife. Katajiri barely manages to block it, the trick nearly knocking him off balance. SHI isn't just fast. She's resourceful and dirty, using every trick to gain advantage. This is what fighting a professional assassin is like. SHI gives him no respite. She uses the momentum of her previous attack to launch another flurry, hidden blades appearing from nowhere. Katajiri is forced back, his defenses beginning to crumble under the relentless assault. More hidden knives? Katajiri yells in disbelief. He's struggling to track all the angles she's attacking from. He tumbles, landing hard as SHI looms over him again. It seems the end is near for the reluctant hero. Katajiri panics, his mind racing for an escape. What do I do? There's got to be some way. He mutters. The spirit is worried too, realizing SHII is a skilled one, basically a human weapon factory. Then a strange sound breaks the silence, a loud stomach growl. Katajiri stops and blinks. "Wait, are you hungry?" he asks, his tone shifting from terror to confusion. SHII freezes, her face flushing as her stomach growls again. The deadly assassin has been undone by something as simple as hunger. Katajiri sees an opening, not for an attack, but for negotiation. "All right, let's make a deal. If you stop trying to kill me for the next 30 minutes, I'll treat you to the best ramen," he declares. SHII's eyes widen at the mention of food. Her killing intent is temporarily replaced by appetite. In a bizarre turn, the battlefield shifts to a local ramen shop called Heaven's Gift. Two steaming bowls arrive at the counter, marking a temporary truce between hunter and assassin. It's surreal, but for Katajiri, it's a gamble for his life, played out over noodles. SHI dives into her meal with an intensity matching her combat skill, the rich broth's aroma instantly capturing her attention. Katajiri watches anxiously, still shaken from the fight, while the spirit is utterly baffled by the absurdity. As SHI tastes it, the assassin's cold aura begins to melt into curiosity. SHI is overwhelmed by the ramen's flavor. "I've never had anything like this. The flavor is so strong," she mutters, eyes sparkling with a joy that sharply contrasts her earlier bloodlust. Katajiri beams, proud that his ramen diplomacy works even better than expected. Katajiri starts lecturing her like a seasoned critic, explaining that the thick, concentrated broth is the best part. But when he teases her like a kid, SHII's assassin instincts flare. She draws her dagger in an instant, warning him not to treat her like a child. Katajiri backpedals quickly, offering a gyoza as a peace offering to keep the blade away. The gyoza works like a charm. SHII's anger dissolves as she takes a bite, her expression turning to pure bliss. Katajiri sighs in relief, telling her to stop casually threatening to kill him. He even gives a pro tip: dip the gyoza in the soup. It's great. It's a surreal culinary bonding between target and assassin. During the meal, they finally exchange names. Katajiri proudly mentions he just ranked up to E rank, while SHI casually reveals she's a C rank hunter. The huge gap in ranks makes Katajiri realize how lucky he was to survive. For a scavenger like him, a C rank is legendary. Katajiri asks how she even knew about the holy sword. SHI explains she saw him fighting in a gate yesterday and heard him shouting the sword's name. It's classic Katajiri. His big mouth got him into trouble. He realizes he shouldn't have been so loud about a legendary weapon in a public dungeon. The plot thickens as SHI reveals she filmed his fight and sent the footage to someone she calls Papa. His orders were simple: kill Katajiri and take the sword. The mention of this mysterious Papa and his cold-blooded instructions sends a chill down Katajiri's spine, and the holy sword spirit is equally disturbed by the casual talk of murder. SHI admits she lost track of him after the gate, which is why she only just caught up. Katajiri is still processing that he's been stalked since yesterday. It's a sobering reminder that owning a legendary weapon makes him a target for powerful, dangerous organizations he doesn't even know about yet. Katajiri asks a logical question: why were you in an E rank gate if you're C rank? It's a waste of potential for a hunter of her caliber to be doing such low-level jobs. He suspects there's a reason she's not taking on challenges suited to her rank, and he's determined to find out what it is. He explains the reality of the hunter world. From C rank onward, monsters become massive and incredibly dangerous. Because of this, hunters need to form parties to split roles like tank, damage dealer, and healer. Without a team, even a skilled hunter like SHI can't safely handle C-rank dungeons, which explains why she's been stuck doing odd jobs in low-rank gates. Katajiri realizes SHI is a lone wolf, likely because of her personality or her connection to Papa. Taking on low-rank jobs at random is a slow, inefficient way to live for someone with her skills. He sees a pattern of isolation he can relate to, even if their power levels are vastly different. He asks if her Papa is pressuring her to rank up faster, sensing a burden behind her cold exterior. SHI turns away. The question clearly hits a nerve. It seems her loyalty to this mysterious figure is more out of fear or obligation than love, making her more a tool than a daughter. SHI snaps back, telling him he knows nothing about her situation. But Katajiri, seeing an opportunity, proposes a daring contract. Within 1 month, I'll make you a B-rank hunter, he declares with a confidence that surprises even himself. He's offering her a way to satisfy Papa without having to kill him for the sword. And the stakes? If I fail, I'll give you the holy sword. The spirit is absolutely horrified, screaming, "HH! What are you saying?" at the top of her lungs. Katajiri is gambling their entire future on this deal, but he knows it's the only way to turn an enemy into an ally and buy himself much-needed time. The chapter ends with Katajiri extending a formal invitation. SHI, team up with me. It's a bold move that leaves the assassin speechless. From scavenger to recruiter, Katajiri is finally taking control of his destiny, forming a duo no one, especially not the Holy Sword spirit, expected to see. What will Papa think of this new alliance? We'll have to wait for the next chapter to find out. Katajiri suddenly makes an unbelievable offer. Team up with me. The invitation leaves SHI, the girl hunter brimming with killing intent, frozen for a moment. SHI's eyes widen in astonishment. She probably never imagined a weak E rank like Katajiri would dare propose that to her. SHI looks baffled, not understanding why. Katajiri explains that to rank up and conquer tougher dungeons, having a team is essential, even if you possess the Holy Sword. He tries to persuade the girl to fight alongside him as a team for 1 month. It's an opportunity for both to advance together instead of remaining alone. But SHI isn't easily fooled. She sees through Katajiri's exterior, knowing he has never truly belonged to a team, and warns him in a low voice not to toy with her. Katajiri begins outlining a promising future, team experience points, valuable loot, and even the chance to reach B rank beyond expectations. Faced with a loquacious Katajiri, SHI begins to waver. After all, this is a mutually beneficial deal, isn't it? Noticing SHI's hesitation, Katajiri plays his final trump. I'll treat you to ramen every day for a month. Immediately, the girl's eyes light up as if filled with a sky full of stars. Sometimes the price of freedom and life rests on a bowl of noodles. SHI agrees, but not without threatening that if she doesn't reach B rank, she'll send him off and take the Holy Sword. Katajiri breathes a quiet sigh. Good thing this girl's simple. The next destination for this odd pair is a branch of the Hunter Association, which manages all the paperwork and missions. Katajiri explains to SHI that this is the place that helps hunters handle paperwork. However, SHI finds a place strange and a little intimidating. They both approach the counter to register as a team. Katajiri urges the girl to quickly open the Hunter app, while SHI is still flustered since it's her first time completing this procedure. The receptionist pushes up the glass, unable to hide her surprise. E-rank Hunter Katajiri and C-rank SHI. The disparity makes her double-check to be sure. Katajiri feels the looks of scorn around him. A low-ranked uncle paired with a petite girl. People wonder what kind of pairing this is. He can only force an embarrassed smile. Ignoring the whispers, Katajiri seriously inquires about missions that could get SHI to B rank within a month. He knows his time is running out. The guild clerk explains that from B rank upward, besides accumulated points, hunters also need association contribution points, earned through emergency missions or quickly clearing difficult dungeons. She doesn't forget to douse them with cold water. Such missions are very rare, and no one has ever ranked up that fast before. SHI listens, her expression gradually turning worried. The final verdict is bitter. Reaching B rank in 1 month is extremely difficult, almost impossible for a newly formed team like theirs. Katajiri breaks out in a cold sweat from the pressure. Immediately, SHI draws her weapon and slashes past Katajiri. Her murderous aura flares so intensely it terrifies him. She leans close to his ear with a cold stare. 1 month, and you can't rank up? Katajiri trembles uncontrollably. Death feels closer than ever. Katajiri frantically begs her to calm down, promising he'll find a way. After all, they still have a whole month. He needs SHI to trust him one more time. Finally, SHI relents. Katajiri promises they'll start missions tomorrow and bribes this ticking time bomb with her favorite miso ramen. At that moment, the elf queen, the holy sword spirit, regal and graceful, manifests beside them. She worries whether Katajiri is truly suitable to pair with a dangerous girl like SHI. Katajiri realizes their similar speed-based styles might cancel each other out, but his real concern isn't the fight. It's SHI's father, the man who would order his own daughter to kill for a sword. The holy sword queen listens, her expression shifting as she senses the weight of his words. I'd rather lend a hand than make an enemy, Katajiri muses, his genuine kindness shining through despite the danger. He's determined to help SHI, completely unaware of the cold, suffocating world the young girl will return to as night falls. Night falls, and SHI returns home, a towering, opulent building whose atmosphere is suffocating. She stands at the door, trembling as she says, I am home. Inside the dark room, only the steady creak of wheels rolls across the floor. A hoarse voice calls her name, SHI. An invisible fear envelopes the girl. A dim light reveals a man in a wheelchair with a face scarred by countless wounds. Zed Zetsui. Behind him stands Lydia, a stern maid with an eye patch. Zaid growls, asking about the holy sword's whereabouts. SHI's eyes fill with terror. Before her papa, the lethal hunter outside is reduced to a weak child, cold sweat streaming down her face. Zaid Zetsui was once a powerful A-rank hunter, but now must use a wheelchair. SHI stammers, trying to explain the holy sword and the new arrangement with Katajiri. She reports the request to reach B rank within 1 month. Zaid's gaze drills into SHI, an imposing look that allows no failure. Zaid erupts in anger, his shadow looming over SHI like a monster. He pounds his wheelchair, shouting for her to reveal the sword's location. SHI can only bow her head and endure his fury. After hearing the plan, Zaid cracks a malicious smile. He allows SHI to use Katajiri to rank up, and if he fails, the holy sword will automatically belong to her. But Zaid's true aim is more cruel. He orders SHI to kill Katajiri immediately after she ranks up to seize the holy sword. When SHI tries to object, Zaid bellows, "Shut up." Zaid rants like a madman, insisting SHI's life exists only to fulfill his unrealized dream of becoming an S-rank hunter. The father's selfishness and tyranny have turned her life into hell. Unable to resist, SHI mumbles her agreement. Zaid leaves, entrusting her to Lydia. The cold maid informs her it's time for her daily training. A new cycle of painful drills begins. The next morning, at the entrance of a C-rank dungeon. This is the first trial of Katajiri and SHI's cooperation. A gloomy atmosphere hangs over the dungeon's mouth. Contrasting with SHI's gloomy demeanor, Katajiri is extremely excited. He raises his fist high, shouting a rallying cry to conquer the team's first mission. Seeing SHI utterly indifferent, Katajiri urges her to be a bit more enthusiastic. In response, SHI silently draws a knife with a razor-sharp glare that makes the E-rank hunter hastily retract his words. Before they begin, Katajiri wants to test both of their abilities. He notices SHI's knives are inlaid with monster magic stones and is curious about what skills they grant. In this world, magic stones dropped by monsters can be inlaid into weapons, allowing the wielder to use that monster's own skill. For example, extending a blade or using a signature attack. SHI demonstrates her skill, knife clone. Seeing the duplicated blades in her hands, Katajiri can't help but exclaim in amazement. So that's why the girl always carries so many knives. SHI looks at a blade, a trace of sadness crossing her eyes as she mentions the past. She reveals her father once used these weapons when he was a hunter named Yu. Katajiri recognizes SHI's hunter origins. He's surprised when she opens her coat to reveal dozens of hidden blades. With the ability to unleash extremely fast consecutive strikes, SHI truly is a young war god. Now if it's his turn, Katajiri proudly shows off the holy sword. He casually claims he simply found it when it fell near him. SHI falls silent, and the elf queen, the sword spirit, flies into a rage at being treated like abandonable property. Katajiri admits he still doesn't fully understand the sword's functions, beyond being able to throw it or dash with terrifying speed. SHI bluntly remarks, "That doesn't look like swordsmanship at all." The elf queen reluctantly nods in agreement as Katajiri sighs. The first target appears, an armored lizard. A massive monster with scales as hard as iron growls, waiting for prey. Katajiri swiftly analyzes the situation, concluding the armored lizard is massive, but likely slow. He proposes that SHI act as a decoy so he can strike an opening, as they both watch the beast from the safety of the ruins. To his utter dismay, SHI rejects the plan with a blunt "don't wanna." Katajiri slumps, finally understanding why such a powerful hunter has always been a loner. She simply has no interest in cooperating, leaving him to find a more flavorful way to convince her. Katajiri enthusiastically explained how wonderful the dish was. He argued that the best topping for miso ramen was buttered corn. The corn adds sweetness, and the melted butter deepens the richness of the broth. Katajiri plays his trump to persuade SHI. "If we finish the mission, I'll put buttered corn in your miso ramen." Immediately, SHI nods sharply. "All right, fine." The power of ramen is truly unmatched. SHI storms into battle like a whirlwind. With razor-sharp knives, she doesn't hesitate to confront the massive armored lizard head-on. SHI's gaze is resolute. She tells herself that even alone she will win. A murderous aura flares strongly around the C-rank hunter. Graceful jumps and rolls allow SHI to dodge the monster's attacks by a hair while seeking openings to counterattack. A powerful overhead slash targets the lizard's head. SHI is displaying the full extent of her superior combat skills. However, the creature's scales are too hard. SHI's knives only leave faint scratches on its natural armor. She quickly twists away to avoid a tail whip from the foe. SHI doesn't give up. She continues unleashing a barrage of attacks at terrifying speed, turning herself into a phantom encircling the monster. From a distance, Katajiri watches silently. He realizes that although SHI is trying to fight alone, her actions inadvertently become the perfect bait for his plan. The elf queen appears beside him to monitor the situation. Katajiri analyzes typical hunter formations. The front line holds and the rear finishes with magic. But for a low-rank hunter like him, having convenient magic is unrealistic. However, he comes up with a new idea. With a confident smile, Katajiri believes this new technique will truly work. It's time for him to showcase his creative thinking in battle. The story flashes back to the day before. In a cramped boarding room, Katajiri and the elf queen discuss battle tactics for the upcoming mission. Katajiri sketches a simple but effective tactical diagram. SHI will draw the monster's attention at the front, while he stands behind to deliver the finishing blow. A basic formation, but rock solid. However, the biggest risk is if Katajiri throws the holy sword and misses, he would lose the weapon and be put in extremely dangerous circumstances. He needs some way for the sword to return to his hand. Katajiri mutters, "If only it worked like a boomerang." The idea sparks something feasible in the elf queen. She smiles knowingly. That could work. The elf queen reveals that the ribbon on her outfit is extremely elastic and can extend very far. Bringing the sword back to Katajiri's hand becomes ridiculously simple. Just tug it hard. Katajiri is ecstatic at this discovery. Back in the present, Katajiri comes up with a bold idea. With this, yes. He's convinced he now holds the key to defeating the monster. Katajiri launches a ferocious throw. The holy sword tears through the air straight toward the armored lizard. The throw carries all of the E-rank hunter's hope and determination. Though the creature's scales remain very tough, Katajiri doesn't flinch. He shouts, "Return to me, holy sword." Thanks to the elf queen's magical ribbon, the sword immediately flies back into his hand. If one slash isn't enough, I'll just keep throwing until you're destroyed. Katajiri relentlessly hurls the sword with high intensity, not giving the opponent a second's rest. The new technique is born. Rapid-fire holy javelin. Consecutive sword throws barrage the monster like a downpour, causing it to grow exhausted under the unceasing assault. The lizard is utterly overwhelmed by Katajiri's strange but effective fighting style. Its iron-like armor begins to show large cracks under the tremendous pressure. SHII seizes the moment, barking a sharp warning to Katajiri to stay alert. In a blur of motion, she launches herself toward the beast, her blades glinting as she prepares the final, crushing blow. With a single devastating strike aimed perfectly at the lizard's weak point, the battle is won. As the armored monster crashes to the ground, the duo's first quest ends in a victory that tastes of more than just success. It tastes of the ramen reward to come. In the battle, Katajiri shouted a signal. Immediately, SHI lunged forward and delivered a decisive slash that tore the monster apart. Afterwards, the two stopped at a ramen shop. A steaming bowl of miso corn butter ramen was served, and they quickly began to eat. After their successful quest, Katajiri and SHI head to a ramen shop to celebrate. Both dive into steaming bowls of miso buttercorn ramen with pure joy, savoring every delicious bite. It's a rare moment of peace and satisfaction for the unlikely duo. As they eat, Katajiri reflects on the battle. He suggests SHI should sometimes act as the decoy for better coordination, but SHI merely replies, "Huh," with her mouth still full of noodles. Katajiri realizes getting her full cooperation may be harder than he thought. SHI admits she hates being bossed around, but Katajiri stays optimistic. He laughs, says he'll keep that in mind, and cheers that at this pace B-rank is a sure thing. SHI continues eating in silence, seemingly indifferent to his enthusiasm. Later, while Katajiri is in the bathroom, the elf queen suddenly manifests beside him. Her sudden appearance startles him, making him shout in surprise, but she remains unfazed, watching him with an inquisitive gaze. The elf queen's expression turns serious as she warns Katajiri that reality won't always be so kind. She reminds him he told SHI she's on track for B-rank, but the path ahead is far more treacherous than he realizes. Katajiri pauses, the weight of her words sinking in as he turns off the faucet. She analyzes their recent fight, noting they only won because they had the high ground and were lucky enough to break the monster's armor. She emphasizes that without adapting to different scenarios, ranking up will be nearly impossible. Katajiri stares at his reflection in the mirror, acknowledging his own weakness. The scene shifts to the massive, imposing Zaid mansion. SHI arrives home, looking weary and small against the backdrop of her father's towering skyscraper. She hesitates at the door, the weight of her household's expectations heavy on her shoulders. Waiting inside is Lydia, the stern maid with an eye patch. She greets SHI coldly, informing her it's time for her daily routine. SHI's expression darkens. She knows exactly what's coming. In the background, Katajiri has secretly followed her, watching from the shadows with concern. SHI asks Lydia to go ahead to the training room, her voice devoid of its usual spark. They enter a vast, sterile training hall that echoes with a cold, oppressive atmosphere. SHI readies herself for the grueling session ahead. Lydia stands at the center of the hall, unsheathing her blades with lethal grace. Her aura is sharp and intimidating, the mark of a former A-rank hunter. She's not just a maid. She's a master of combat who expects nothing less than perfection from SHI. Lydia announces the start of today's routine as SHI stands ready, dwarfed by the scale of the room. The air is thick with tension. Just as they're about to begin, an unexpected voice rings out from the entrance. Katajiri suddenly bursts into the hall, bowing deeply and shouting an apology for intruding. He claims he has something extremely important to ask, catching both Lydia and SHI completely off guard. With desperate eyes and a bag of cookies in his hand, Katajiri begs Lydia, "Would you teach me swordsmanship?" SHI stands in the background, staring at him as if he's lost his mind, while Lydia watches with a skeptical, unreadable expression. The story flashes back to an hour earlier. Katajiri and SHI were walking back from the ramen shop when he asks her about her training. He's curious how such a young girl became so skilled in combat. SHI explains that her insane attack speed comes from daily training with Lydia, a former hunter-turned-maid. Katajiri is stunned by the revelation and immediately gets a bright, and potentially reckless, idea. Impressed by SHI's dedication, Katajiri excitedly asks if Lydia could teach him too. SHI laughs it off, thinking he's joking, but Katajiri is dead serious about wanting to improve. SHI flatly refuses, saying there's no way Lydia would allow it. Katajiri is shocked by her quick dismissal, but he doesn't give up and continues to follow her, pleading his case. Katajiri goes full begging mode, clasping his hands and crying out, "Please, please," repeatedly. He argues he needs to get stronger if they want to reach B rank. SHI eventually relents with an annoyed groan, warning him he's on his own. Back in the present, SHI leads Katajiri into the training hall, muttering, "Don't say I didn't warn you." Katajiri follows, clutching his bag of peace offerings, nervous but determined as he approaches Lydia. Katajiri formally introduces himself as an E-rank hunter and SHI's teammate. He bows again, sweating as he apologizes for interrupting their session, while Lydia remains silent and cold as stone. He sheepishly offers the bag of cookies, hoping the bribe might soften her. Lydia regards the gift with utter contempt, her eye patch adding to her menacing presence. She asks why she would have any reason to teach a weakling like him. Lydia's presence becomes suffocating, her icy glare testing the limits of Katajiri's resolve. She demands a real reason, a motivation worthy of her time, before she'll consider training an E-rank hunter. Though trembling, Katajiri stands his ground. He shouts that the reason is undeniable. He is the weak link. Katajiri admits that while he carries the holy sword, he lacks the skill to control it, and his weakness is what's holding SHI back. He lays his pride bare, awaiting Lydia's verdict. Katajiri burned with determination. He believed that if he grew stronger, his support would be the key factor for SHI to successfully rank up to B. Realizing the gap in strength was too great, Katajiri swallowed his pride and bowed, begging Lydia, SHI's maid, to teach him swordsmanship. Lydia only watched in silence. Lydia finally relents, but with a terrifying condition. Katajiri must undergo the same daily routine she subjects SHI to. Katajiri's excitement quickly turns to nervous laughter as he realizes what he signed up for. Without warning, Lydia unleashes a colossal energy slash. The force tears through the training hall, sending a shockwave that shatters the floor and fills the air with dust. Katajiri is sent flying, barely holding onto his bag of cookies. He gasps in disbelief at the scale of the attack. The elf queen manifests beside him, shouting for him to focus before he gets himself killed. Lydia sets a simple but near impossible challenge. "If you can land even a single hit on me, I'll grant your request." Terrified, Katajiri asks SHI about Lydia's true power and learns the staggering truth. She was an A-rank hunter. Lydia's eyes grow cold as she speaks of her sole ambition, to fulfill Lord Zaid's dream of reaching S rank. She threatens to kill Katajiri then and there and hand the holy sword to SHI herself if he fails to prove his worth. Katajiri was concentrating fully, the holy sword in his hands, trembling violently. Beside him, the elf queen, the sword's spirit, kept guiding how to synchronize their killing intent to face the opponent before them. The battle erupted at a terrifying speed. Even prepared mentally, Katajiri still had to brace himself against the opponent's power in an atmosphere thick with pressure. Too fast, Katajiri gritted his teeth in astonishment. Each strike from the enemy was not only lightning quick, but carried such crushing weight that his arms went numb. Lydia, the A-rank maid with the mysterious blindfold, was utterly dominating. Her gaze was cold as if looking at a toy, and every swing of her blade was a killing blow. In the blink of an eye, Lydia appeared behind Katajiri. Too slow, she sneered contemptuously, while he hadn't even recovered enough to understand what had just happened. Just as Lydia's blade was about to reach its mark, SHI suddenly rushed in to intervene. The petite but deadly young hunter stopped the attack, much to Katajiri's surprise. Lydia wondered why SHI had defended him, but SHI simply replied that it was part of the training. Katajiri, gasping for breath, realized they weren't merely practicing. They seemed intent on actually killing each other. Despite the dire difference in strength, Katajiri still stood his ground. He looked Lydia in the eye and acknowledged how terrifying she was, but that only made him more desperate than ever to learn swordsmanship from her. At all costs, I'll touch you. The E-rank hunter's eyes blazed with determination. Lydia merely smiled challengingly. She didn't believe this frail person could do it. Observing from the side, the Elf Queen noticed the situation was slipping out of control. Yet in that deadlock, she suddenly conceived the idea of testing that thing on Katajiri. The scene rewound to a day earlier. Katajiri was curiously asking about SHI's weapon, the one that could split and replicate itself in a miraculous way. The Elf Queen explained that weapons imbued with a monster's magic stone inherit the skills of that very monster. Hearing this, Katajiri began to regard the holy sword with an entirely different look. A crazy idea flashed into Katajiri's mind. If the sword has skills, could I use them myself? A confident smile appeared on his face, signaling an imminent surge of power.